The story you are about to hear is a wonderful tale of revenge and romance. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to the channel and comment with the location you're watching from. Thank you for listening. Congratulations to Ethan, I said, forcing the words through a smile that felt like broken glass. My name is Anthony. I'm 44 years old, and I had just watched 5 years of my life get handed to a 23-year-old kid who had been at Ravenwood Ventures for exactly 3 months. Ethan smiled as if he had earned something on his own merit. The conference room smelled of stale coffee and disappointment. The air conditioner hummed with that constant drone you only notice when you're trying not to scream. Everyone applauded. I clapped too. My hands went through the mechanical motion while my mind processed every detail of the moment. The cold sweat trickling down my neck, the bitter taste in my mouth, the weight on my chest that felt like an anvil. My manager, Gerald Peterson, stood at the head of the table, his chest puffed out like a rooster. His bright red tie shone under the fluorescent lights, and I found myself wondering how someone could look so proud of such a blatant betrayal. Ethan is going to do great things as our new regional director of operations, he said. The same position I had been groomed for since 2019. The same position they promised would be mine when old Mr. Henderson retired. The same position I had sacrificed birthdays, Christmases, and countless nights of sleep for. I kept my hands clasped, my face neutral. But something cold settled in my chest, right where hope used to live. It was as if someone had blown out a candle I didn't even know was still lit. Ethan was Gerald's nephew. Everybody knew. Nobody talked about it. It was the elephant in the room that everyone pretended not to see as it trampled on our dreams and expectations. The kid had ink on his Wharton business degree that was barely dry, and a confidence that came from never having had to earn a single thing. His shoes were Italian, his watch was Swiss, and his smile was the kind that only someone who has never known a day of hardship can give. He spent 3 months shadowing me as I handled supplier contracts, managed supply chain logistics, and resolved equipment failures across 4 states. 3 months taking notes in a leather-bound notebook that probably cost more than my lunch for a week. Now he was my boss. Anthony was instrumental in getting Ethan up to speed, Gerald added, as if that made things better. As if 5 years of perfect performance reviews and 60-hour work weeks were just an elaborate training program for someone else's future. I felt the pitying glances from my colleagues. Megan from accounting avoided my gaze when our eyes met. Robert from HR shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Even Paul, the intern I had helped get a full-time offer last year, looked embarrassed. I nodded. Happy to help, I said. The words came out automatically, rehearsed from years of biting my tongue in the corporate world. The meeting ended. People filed out, offering handshakes and congratulations to Ethan. Each compliment felt like a slap in my face. I gathered my notepad and pen, moving slower than usual. My mind was sharp and clear, like when you wake up in the middle of the night and suddenly understand something that's been bothering you for months. Gerald caught my arm as I reached the door. His hand was clammy with sweat, and his grip was tighter than necessary. Anthony, a minute. His tone was the one bosses use when they want you to feel grateful for scraps. We were alone in the conference room. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. He loosened his tie and tried to look understanding. The late afternoon light streamed through the window, casting long shadows that made his face look even more insincere. I know this might be a surprise, he said. A surprise, as if I hadn't heard the whispers in the hallways for the last few weeks, as if I hadn't seen the private lunches between him and Ethan, as if I were an idiot. But Ethan brings a new perspective, a new energy. Of course, I said. My voice came out drier than I intended. You get it, don't you? It's nothing personal. Nothing personal. 5 years of my life thrown in the trash, and it was nothing personal. I stared at him for a long moment. Gerald was 52 with a slight potbelly and thinning hair. He did a comb over to hide the bald spots, using so much gel it gleamed under the light. He had that distinct smell of someone who wears cologne that's too expensive to compensate for other things. He inherited his position when his father-in-law retired. The irony wasn't lost on me. The cycle of nepotism repeating itself while people like me watched from the sidelines. I understand perfectly, I said. And for the first time in 5 years, I really did. He relaxed, his shoulders slumped, the smile returning. Great, I knew you'd be professional about this. That's why you're such a valuable member of the team. Valuable. Not valuable enough for the promotion I deserved, but valuable enough to train his nephew and smile about it. As valuable as a tool you use until it breaks, then you throw it away. I went back to my desk and sat down. The office was buzzing with normal activity. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people solving problems. The smell of reheated coffee mixed with the stale air conditioning. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen for a full minute before I started to type. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat, waiting for me to make a decision that would change everything. I started at Ravenwood Ventures in March of 2019, right after my divorce was finalized. I remember my first day like it was yesterday. I arrived half an hour early, as nervous as a teenager at his first job. The building seemed imposing, all glass and steel, promising a future that would never come. I needed a fresh start, and manufacturing logistics felt like something solid I could lean on. After my 12-year marriage fell apart, I needed something predictable, routine, safe. The company handled the distribution of industrial equipment throughout the entire Midwest. A monotonous job that paid well and let me sleep at night, or so I thought. Gerald himself hired me, shook my hand, said they needed someone with my experience. His handshake was a little too firm, the kind that wants to establish dominance from the first moment. I had spent 12 years at my previous company before budget cuts eliminated my position. I still remember the day they called me into HR. Friday, 3 in the afternoon, the classic layoff hour. At 44, starting over wasn't easy, but Gerald made it sound like an opportunity. "We're growing fast," he said during my interview. "Lots of room for growth for the right people." The right people. Now I knew what that meant. People with the right last name, the right family connections. I became the right person. I worked weekends when shipments were delayed. The smell of wet cardboard in the warehouses, the noise of forklifts, the fatigue that settled deep in your bones. I stayed late when clients had emergencies. Cold pizza in the empty office, the glow of the monitor the only light. Late night calls with suppliers on the other side of the country. I built relationships with suppliers from Chicago to Milwaukee. Business lunches where I drank sparkling water while they had whiskey. Handshakes that sealed multi-million-dollar deals. Promises kept that built trust. My performance reviews were flawless, exceptional, extraordinary, essential. Words that appeared on paper every year but never translated into real recognition. Gerald always smiled. That used car salesman smile that never reached his eyes. He always promised that bigger things were coming. "You've got manager material, Anthony." He'd say, "You just need to be patient." The patience of a fool is what he meant. Patient. I was good at being patient. I'd been patient in my marriage as it crumbled. Patient with the broken promises and lonely nights. Too patient. My daughter Sophia visited me every other weekend. The custody agreement I accepted because I didn't want her to see her parents fighting. She was 16 now, old enough to notice when her dad looked tired. Old enough to realize that the 2-bedroom apartment where I lived wasn't what she expected for her father. Sometimes she'd find me at the kitchen table on Sunday mornings, laptop open, answering work emails, the sunlight streaming through the window, the smell of fresh coffee and me stuck to a screen that never stopped demanding attention. "Dad, it's the weekend," she'd say. Her voice had that tone of concern that no father wants to hear from his daughter. "Just catching up on a few things," I'd reply. "Building something good here." She'd roll her eyes, but she understood. Or she pretended to, so she wouldn't hurt my feelings. Her mother remarried a lawyer who had normal work hours and coached Little League. Mark, his name was. Nice guy, I had to admit. House with a pool, new car, vacations. I was the dad who worked too much, but always sent the birthday money on time and never missed a school play. The dad who sat in the back row because he rushed in from work, still in his suit, sweaty but present. The first crack appeared 6 months ago when Gerald mentioned his nephew might be joining the company. We were in the elevator going up to the 10th floor. The smell of his expensive cologne filled the small space. "Smart kid," he said. "Just graduated from Wharton. Business, top of his class." I nodded, not thinking much of it. Companies hired recent grads all the time. They started in entry-level positions, learned from the veterans. They let them learn the business from the ground up. It was the natural order of things. But Ethan didn't start from the ground up. He started in the office next to Gerald's with the title of Operations Specialist and a salary I could only imagine. I heard through the grapevine it was more than mine. 5 years of experience was worth less than a brand new degree. Gerald introduced him to everyone as if he were royalty. "Ethan is going to observe our processes," Gerald announced. "Learn how we do things. Bring some fresh ideas." Fresh ideas, as if 5 years of process optimization weren't fresh enough. Ethan observed by joining my client calls, taking notes as I explained supplier negotiations, asking questions that showed he didn't understand the basics of what we did. Why do we offer such long payment terms? How do we know which supplier to trust? What happens if a delivery is late? First semester college questions. But he was eager, I'll give him that, and polite. He said yes sir and thank you, like his mother had raised him well. She probably had. Wealthy family, expensive education, everything served on a silver platter. I trained him because that's what you do. You help the new guy. You share your knowledge. You build up the next generation. Even when the new guy's last name is Peterson and his uncle signs your paychecks. Even when you start to suspect where this is all going. Even when your stomach churns every time he asks a basic question you've already answered 3 times. The moment I knew for sure came 3 weeks ago during a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. It was a rainy Thursday, the kind of rain that makes Chicago traffic impossible and everyone miserable. I had stayed late to finish the quarterly reports. The numbers weren't adding up, and I had to find the error before Friday's presentation. The office was empty except for the cleaning crew. Maria, the cleaning lady, waved at me as she pushed her cart down the hall. "Working late again, Mr. Anthony." She always called me Mr. Anthony. I never corrected her. I was heading to the break room for a coffee when I heard voices from Gerald's office. His door was slightly ajar, and the hallway carried sound better than people realized. The building's acoustics were terrible. You could hear conversations from 3 rooms away if you paid attention. "The board is going to ask questions. Ethan's only been here 2 months. That was Gerald, speaking in the defensive tone he used when he was being pressured. Another voice, deeper, older, probably James Miller, from corporate. His New York accent was unmistakable. "You said Anthony was ready for the promotion. Months of memos saying so. Anthony is solid, but Ethan is family, and he has the degree. The board loves degrees, especially Wharton degrees. It makes the company look modern. What about Anthony's experience? 5 years building relationships, saving contracts, putting out fires." Gerald laughed. It wasn't a malicious laugh, but it wasn't kind either. It was the laugh of someone making a deal who knows they're getting the better end of it. Anthony's a good employee, reliable, but he's not executive material. Too operational. He doesn't think strategically. He'll keep doing what he does, make good money, and everything will be fine. He's the type who's satisfied with stability. I stood in that hallway for 30 seconds, listening to them plan my future. My heart pounded so hard I was sure they could hear it. My hands were trembling with anger. Ethan would get Henderson's job. I would train him, support him, and pretend to be grateful for the opportunity. The script had already been written. "Anthony won't make trouble," Gerald continued. "He's got a daughter, child support, a mortgage. He needs this job. He'll just lower his head and take it. He's a family man, the kind who doesn't take risks." That's when I backed away silently so they wouldn't hear my footsteps. Every step was calculated, avoiding the floorboards that creaked. I went back to my desk, saved my work, and calmly shut down my computer. I grabbed my briefcase, my umbrella, and walked out of the building. The rain was coming down hard, soaking my suit in seconds. I didn't care. I drove home in complete silence, no radio. Just the rhythmic squeak of the wipers and the drumming of the rain on the car roof. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain against the window. I kept thinking about Gerald's words. He'll just lower his head. As if I were a horse being broken. As if 5 years of loyalty and hard work had only earned me the right to be grateful for scraps. As if I were nothing more than a disposable cog in the machine. I thought of Sophia, of how proud she was when I told her about the possible promotion. We were having pizza, our Thursday tradition. "My dad's gonna be a director," she told her friends in their group chat. She showed me the messages, the congratulations, the clapping emojis. Now I would have to explain why it wasn't going to happen. I would have to see the disappointment in her eyes. Again. I thought of my ex-wife, Caroline, How she always said I was too passive. "You let people walk all over you, Anthony," she'd said during one of our last fights. Dishes flying, words cutting deeper than the shards. "Stand up for yourself for once. Fight for something, for us." But I never fought. I always thought that being professional, being proper, being patient would be rewarded. Maybe she was right. Maybe that's why she was with Mark now, and I was alone in an apartment listening to the rain. The next morning, I went to work with a different mindset. It was like I had taken off a pair of foggy glasses I didn't even know I was wearing. I watched Ethan more closely. I saw how he always arrived after 9 while I was there by 7, how he went out for 2-hour lunches with his uncle while I ate a sandwich at my desk. I noticed how Gerald included him in executive meetings, introducing him to important clients while keeping me focused on day-to-day operations. The grunt work as they saw it. I saw how other managers started consulting Ethan on decisions that should have been mine. Where should we place the order for emergency supplies? Ask Ethan. Which supplier should we choose for the new contract? Ethan is analyzing it. 3 weeks later, sitting in that conference room, watching Ethan accept congratulations for a job he hadn't earned, I felt something inside me break. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden epiphany. It was like the moment you realize a relationship is over, that there's no going back. It wasn't anger, not sadness, just clarity. Crystal clear, sharp, liberating. Gerald thought I needed that job. He thought I would lower my head because I had bills to pay and a daughter to support. He thought fear would keep me trapped. He was wrong about a lot of things, but mostly, he was wrong about who I was, or maybe about who I was becoming in that very moment. I opened my laptop and started typing my resignation letter. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. The words flowed as if they had been waiting for years to come out. For the first time in my professional life, I knew exactly what I was going to do. It wasn't an act of desperation. It was an act of dignity. I sent my resignation letter at exactly 4:30 p.m. on Friday. The timing was no coincidence. It was the same time they had let me go from my previous company. A small personal piece of symbolism. Gerald had just returned from a tour of the warehouse with Ethan, showing him his domain. I could hear them down the hall, Gerald explaining things he didn't fully understand himself, Ethan feigning interest. I knocked on his door 3 times. Firm, decisive, I handed him the envelope and said, "This is my 2 weeks' notice." The envelope was a plain white one bought at any office supply store. Nothing special, except for what it contained. Gerald's face went through several expressions in a matter of seconds. Confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked like panic. It was fascinating to watch the understanding dawn in his eyes. He tore open the envelope hastily, almost ripping the letter inside. His eyes darted back and forth across the page, reading and rereading as if the words might change. "Is this a joke?" he asked. His voice was higher than usual. "No, sir, it's professional, formal, and final. You can't be serious." All the blood had drained from his face. "You're leaving because Ethan got the promotion." It wasn't a question. I remained silent, letting him fill the void. It was a technique I'd learned from difficult clients. People hate silence. They always end up saying more than they should. Gerald stood up, pacing behind his desk. His swivel chair continued to spin on its own for a few seconds. "Anthony, let's be reasonable. You're upset, I get it. Anyone would be. But to throw away 5 years of building a career, that's not smart. It's emotional, irrational. I've already made my decision, sir." My voice was calm, professional. Years of practice in maintaining composure in difficult situations. What about your daughter? Your responsibilities, the bills, the mortgage, the child support. There it was. The card he thought would always win. The leverage he thought he had. The chain that kept me tethered. The reason I would lower my head and stay quiet. Like a good employee. Like a good, responsible father. Like a defeated man. "I'll figure it out," I said. "I always do." Gerald's tone changed. The attempts at conciliation were over. It became harder, threatening. The mask of the understanding boss fell away completely. "You realize how this looks, right? 44 years old, storming out in a huff. Quitting because you didn't get promoted. It's unprofessional, childish, immature. No serious company will want someone like that." I nodded. "I understand why you would think that. It's your prerogative to have that opinion. I'm not giving you a good reference. He crossed his arms, leaning against his desk. You understand that, don't you? 5 years down the drain. Leaving like this. Leaving us in the lurch in the middle of important contracts. No company wants someone who throws a tantrum when things don't go their way. You're burning bridges, Anthony. Bridges you took years to build. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I didn't back down. 5 years of perfect performance, and now I was throwing a tantrum. 5 years of staying late and working weekends, and now I was unprofessional. The narrative was already being rewritten. That's your choice, I said. My track record speaks for itself. Gerald sat down again, trying a different approach. The tone shifted to something almost paternal. Look, Anthony, I like you. I always have. You're good at what you do. Excellent, actually. But Ethan brings something different to the table. Youth, new ideas, strategic vision, connections. His name opens doors. Vision, I repeated, savoring the word. Ethan barely knows the difference between a supplier and a distributor. The board wants innovation, disruptive thinking. Ethan represents the future of this company. We need new blood, new energy. You understand that, don't you? And what do I represent? I already knew the answer, but I wanted to hear it from him. Gerald paused, choosing his words. Experience, stability, operational knowledge. That's valuable too in its own way, but it's not leadership material. Not in today's world. In its own way. Like a consolation prize. Valuable enough to keep things running, but not valuable enough to lead. Valuable enough to train his replacement, but not valuable enough to be promoted. I understood the math. It had always been clear. I appreciate the clarification, sir. Everything is very clear now. Don't do this, Anthony. His voice was almost pleading now. Take the weekend, think it over. Go fishing, have a beer, blow off some steam. Come back on Monday, and we'll pretend this conversation never happened. We can even discuss a raise. Not a new title, but we can improve your salary. 15%, 20 maybe, a raise. After denying me the promised promotion, he was offering money as if that would fix everything. As if dignity had a price tag. I looked at Gerald for a long moment. I studied his face. The worry lines, the sweat on his brow, the poorly disguised desperation. He truly believed I would back down. He believed that threatening my reference and questioning my professionalism would make me yield. He believed a weekend would be enough for me to swallow my pride and come back with my head lowered. I'll work my 2 weeks, I said. I'll train Ethan on everything he needs to know. I'll document all the processes. I'll ensure a smooth transition. Gerald's face darkened. Red crept up from his neck. You'll train him. You think Ethan needs training from someone who quits when things don't go his way? From someone with no vision for the future? He'll need to understand the supplier contracts. 532 active contracts, the supply chain logistics, 4 distribution centers, the emergency protocols, 17 different procedures. I kept my voice calm, factual. Unless you plan on figuring all that out yourself, sir. That hit him. I saw the exact moment reality set in. Gerald knew he didn't understand the technical side of operations. Neither did Ethan. They needed me at least for 2 more weeks. The knowledge I had spent 5 years accumulating wasn't in any manual. It was in my head, in my personal notes, in the relationships I had built. Fine, Gerald said, his voice tense. 2 weeks, but don't expect any favors. No farewell party. Don't expect me to help you find another job. You're burning bridges here, Anthony. Important bridges. You're going to regret this. I nodded and turned to leave. My hand was on the doorknob when he called my name. Anthony. His voice had something different now. Almost vulnerable. You're making a mistake. A huge mistake. At 44, it's not easy to start over. The market is tough. Nobody hires people our age for leadership roles. You'll end up with something worse, earning less, full of regret. I paused at the door. He was right about one thing. It wouldn't be easy. But staying wasn't either. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make, sir, and it's my right to make it. I walked back to my desk, feeling lighter than I had in years. It was as if I had taken off a heavy backpack I didn't even realize I was carrying. The office was nearly empty, people heading home for the weekend. TGIF. The late afternoon light painted everything in gold. Ethan was still at his desk, studying org charts as if they held the secrets of the universe. His young face was concentrated, his brow furrowed. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. I sat down and opened my laptop, starting to document everything Ethan would need to know. Not for Gerald, but because there were people who depended on our supply chains functioning properly. Hospitals waiting for medical equipment, factories needing spare parts, small businesses relying on timely deliveries, supplier contact information, not just the official numbers, but the personal cell phones for emergencies. Emergency procedures. What to do when a truck overturns, when a strike blocks support, when a supplier fails. Troubleshooting guides. Years of experience condensed into flowcharts and checklists. Not because Gerald asked, but because the people who relied on our supply chains deserved better than the chaos that was coming. My phone buzzed. The sound cut through the silence of the empty office. A text from my daughter. "Dad, can we do dinner tomorrow? Want to hear about your week? Pizza at the usual spot?" I smiled for the first time that day. A real smile, not the forced one from the meeting. I replied, "Absolutely, sweetie. I have some news to share. And you pick the pizza this time, any kind you want. Good news for the first time in a long time. News about standing up for myself, about choosing dignity over stability, about walking away from people who didn't value what I had to offer. News she might not fully understand now, but that might serve as an example one day. Gerald thought he was punishing me. He thought threatening my reference would make me grateful for the chance to stay. He thought the fear of instability would keep me trapped. He had no idea what he had just set in motion. He didn't know that liberation sometimes comes disguised as loss. I worked until 8 that Friday night, documenting processes, creating manuals that didn't exist. The office was completely empty now, just me and the cleaning crew. Maria passed by with her cart. "Still here, Mr. Anthony? Heading home soon, Maria. Just finishing up some important things." She smiled and continued her work. She had probably seen hundreds of people like me over the years. Working late, sacrificing life for work, hoping for recognition that would never come. Saturday morning brought clarity. I woke up without an alarm for the first time in years. The sun streamed through the window, and I just lay there unhurried with no urgent emails waiting for a reply. I made coffee in the Italian mocha pot that Caroline had left behind. The aroma filled the small apartment. I sat on the balcony watching the city wake up. Chicago never fully sleeps, but on Saturdays it yawns a little longer. Sophia arrived at noon as planned. She hugged me tighter than usual, as if she sensed something. She had this sixth sense for her father's emotions. "How was your week, Dad?" she asked as we sat down at the pizzeria. The place was bustling, families enjoying their Saturday. The smell of baking dough and tomato sauce created a cozy atmosphere. "Interesting," I said. "Very interesting. I have some news." She tilted her head, curious. Did that promotion finally come through? I took a deep breath. The familiar smell of the pizzeria, the buzz of conversations around us, the expectation on my daughter's face. Not exactly. The promotion went to someone else. My boss's nephew, a 23-year-old kid who's been with the company for 3 months. Her face shifted from expectation to outrage in seconds. "That's not fair. You work so hard. All those weekends, all those nights. Life is rarely fair, Sophia. But I learned something important." She waited, her eyes still flashing with anger on my behalf. "I learned that sometimes the best response to injustice isn't to accept it and hope it gets better. It's to walk away and build something better." I quit. The silence lasted a few seconds. I could see the gears turning in her head, processing the information. "You quit? Like you left your job?" "Willingly, exactly. My last 2 weeks start on Monday." "But Dad, what about the bills? The apartment and—" She paused, not wanting to say child support. "I'll figure it out. I always have. And you know what? I think I'll be better off without them." She studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled. A proud smile. "Good, Dad. Seriously, you seem different. Lighter. What do you mean?" "I don't know. For the last few years, you've always seemed tired, defeated. Today, you seem alive." The pizza arrived. 4 cheese, her favorite since she was a little kid. We ate and talked about school, friends, plans for the summer. Not about work, not about responsibilities. Just a father and daughter enjoying a Saturday. When I dropped her off at her mum's, Caroline was at the door. She waved politely, as always. Mark appeared behind her, waving too. Good people, both of them. Sophia deserved to have stability, even if it wasn't with me. "Everything okay, Anthony?" Caroline asked. Something in my face must have been different. Better than okay. Changes on the horizon. Good changes. She nodded, not pushing. After 12 years of marriage, she knew my tells. Sophia hugged me before she went inside. "I'm proud of you, Dad, for standing up for yourself." The words stayed with me the whole way home. Sunday was for planning. I opened my laptop. But this time not to work for Ravenwood, to work for myself. I updated my resume, highlighting accomplishments I had downplayed out of humility, reduced operational costs by 30%, increased delivery efficiency by 45%, built a network of over 200 reliable suppliers, numbers that spoke for themselves. I made a list of industry contacts, people I'd met over the years who respected my work regardless of my title. John from Union Metallurgy, Sandra from Integrated Logistics, Carlos from Industrial Networks, people who knew my real value. I researched companies, market salaries, industry trends. I discovered I was being paid 20% below the market average for my experience. Gerald had kept me tied down with promises while saving money on my salary. Monday brought immediate revelations. I got in early as usual. 7 in the morning, the parking lot still empty. The night guard greeted me. "Mr. Anthony, always the first one in, huh?" Not always been, but today I had a reason to be early. I found Ethan already at his desk, looking overwhelmed. Glasses askew, tie loosened, 3 empty coffee cups on his desk. He had spreadsheets open on 3 monitors and was frantically jotting down information from supplier emails. Papers everywhere, colorful sticky notes creating a rainbow of desperation. "Good morning, Ethan," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "How's the transition going?" He looked up, relief and despair warring on his young face. "Anthony, thank God you're here. I've been here since 6 this morning, trying to figure out the Morris Industries account. Their purchasing manager is furious, threatening to cancel our contract if we don't fix a shipping issue by noon. She calls every half hour. She's saying we're going to cost them millions in lost production. Morris Industries, our biggest client, our most complex contract. They ordered heavy machinery components worth $4 million annually. A single mistake could cost hundreds of thousands in contractual penalties. I had managed their account personally for 4 years. I knew every detail, every preference, every quirk of their purchasing manager. What's the specific problem? I asked, already guessing the answer. Something about delayed titanium brackets from our supplier in Gary, but I can't figure out which supplier it is. I have 15 different suppliers in Gary in our systems. Their emails are confusing, full of codes I don't understand. And worst of all, the tracking system shows 3 different shipments, all with similar codes. I looked at Ethan's screen. It was chaos. He had the furious email from Morris open, full of technical terms. He was also looking at supplier contracts that had nothing to do with titanium brackets. He was looking in the wrong place in the wrong system, with the wrong parameters. He was drowning in a teacup because no one had taught him how to swim. "Ethan," I said carefully, choosing my words, "did Gerald go over the Morris account information with you? The specific protocols, the emergency contacts, the history of issues?" "He said you would handle the transition." He paused, looking embarrassed. "But then he mentioned your situation, said you were leaving in a tantrum, that I should handle this myself to show initiative, to prove I deserved the job." My situation, a tantrum. That's how they were painting my departure, rewriting the narrative to protect Gerald's ego and justify Ethan's unearned promotion. But looking at the kid, sweating bullets at 7:30 in the morning, Guy just saw someone thrown into an impossible situation. I spent the next 3 hours explaining the Morris relationship to Ethan. It was like giving a 5-year crash course in minutes. I explained how their just-in-time delivery requirements worked, 0 tolerance for delays. I showed him the backup supplier network I'd built over 4 years. Primary supplier, secondary, emergency. Always 3 layers of security. I helped him understand why a simple shipping delay could escalate into a contract cancellation. Penalty clauses, progressive fines, the right to immediate termination after 3 failures. "This is incredibly complex," Ethan said, when we finally resolved the crisis. It was almost 11. We had mobilized 2 backup suppliers, chartered an express truck, and promised a 5% discount as an apology. How do you keep track of all these moving parts? All these details? Is it humanly possible? Experience, I said. 5 years of learning every detail. And good documentation. Documentation I created in my spare time, because the company never invested in a proper system. Could you show me your documentation system, please? His voice was almost pleading. That's when I realized something fundamental. Gerald hadn't just promoted Ethan without preparation. He'd promoted him without understanding what the job actually required, without knowing that it was impossible to learn in weeks what took years to master. Ethan wasn't incompetent. He was inexperienced, but he was completely unprepared for the scope of regional operations. And Gerald, in his arrogance, thought a last name and a degree would make up for 5 years of accumulated knowledge. I spent my lunch hour making calls. I didn't eat, just drank black coffee at my desk. I reached out to people I had built relationships with over the years. News travels fast in industrial logistics. A shakeup like this was like blood in the water. People were already hearing about the changes at Ravenwood. Some were concerned about continuity. Others were curious about new opportunities. A few were smelling blood. "Anthony," said Janet Morris, the purchasing manager, who had almost cancelled the contract that morning. Her voice was tense, suspicious. "I'm hearing some disturbing rumors about a management change. Rumors about nepotism. Please tell me you're still handling our account. At least tell me you'll be involved in the transition. For the next 2 weeks, yes. I'm training my replacement. After that, Ethan Peterson will be your primary contact." The silence on the line was deafening. I could hear her breathing, the background noise of her office. "Peterson as in Gerald Peterson? His nephew? You've got to be kidding me, Anthony. Please tell me that's a joke." "Yes, his nephew. Oh my God. That kid called me this morning asking questions that made no sense. He asked if we wanted titanium or steel." "Titanium or steel?" As if they were interchangeable. I thought he was a new intern, not your replacement. "He's eager to learn," I tried without much conviction. "I don't have the time or the patience to train Ravenwood's management." Her voice went up an octave. "We have production schedules to meet. Millions on the line. If your company can't provide competent service, we'll find someone who can." "And Anthony, yes? Where are you going to be in 2 weeks?" "Still deciding. But you can be sure it won't be far." She got the implicit message. "Let me know when you know. We have contracts up for review next quarter. It would be a shame to have to look for new suppliers after 4 years of excellent partnership." This conversation repeated itself 4 times with 4 different major clients, each one more incredulous than the last, each one questioning the sanity of the decision, each one asking where I would be. By the end of the day, I had a crystal clear picture of what would happen after I left. Ethan would struggle monumentally. Clients would get frustrated with basic mistakes. Gerald would panic and try to micromanage operations he didn't understand. He'd probably make everything worse. The entire regional division would start bleeding clients within 6 months, maybe less. But that wasn't my problem anymore, or was it? A part of me, the part that spent 5 years building something, ached at the thought of the imminent destruction. On Tuesday morning, Gerald called me into his office. Urgent knocks on my door. "Anthony now." The tone allowed no argument. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 3 days. Dark circles under his eyes, unshaven, his tie crooked. He had papers scattered all over his desk, spilled coffee staining a few contracts. "Anthony, sit down. I've been thinking about our conversation on Friday, reflecting. Perhaps we were a bit hasty, acted in the heat of the moment." I sat waiting. I knew this dance. The backpedaling when reality hits. Maybe there's room for both you and Ethan in management. A different structure. You could be associate director, handling the operational side. Ethan as the director, focused on strategic planning, the future vision. You'd be a team, associate director. A made-up title. The same job, the same pay, but now pretending Ethan was my boss. Having to get approval for decisions I had made on my own for 5 years. "That's generous," I said, keeping my face neutral. "But I'm sticking with my original decision. I've given my word." Gerald's face went from conciliatory to enraged in seconds, the red rising from his neck like a thermometer. "You're going to regret this, Anthony. I promise you. You're committing career suicide. Nobody hires a 44-year-old director. The market belongs to the young guys. Maybe, but at least it will be my choice." He stood up, pointing a finger at me. "When you're unemployed, remembering the good times here, Don't come crawling back. That door closes when you leave. Understood, sir. I went back to my desk thinking about his words. Career suicide. Maybe it was. But staying here, being diminished daily, watching someone unqualified take over what I'd built, wouldn't that be suicide of the soul? On Wednesday, everything changed. I woke up to 3 messages on LinkedIn, 2 emails and a missed call. The industry had heard about my departure, and unlike what Gerald predicted, they didn't see me as a problem. They saw me as available, a rarity on the market. My first interview was on Thursday morning with Silverlink Energy, a renewable energy equipment distributor based in Ann Arbor. A company on the rise, revenue tripled in the last 2 years. Their regional manager, David Fisher, had been trying to hire me for 2 years. We always had lunch at industry trade shows, and the question always came up, when are you leaving Ravenwood? Their office was modern, all glass and plants with solar panels on the roof. Everything Ravenwood wasn't. David met me at reception himself. Anthony, finally, when I heard you were available, I cancelled 2 meetings to see you today. His handshake was firm but not competitive. His smile was genuine. We sat in a room with a view of the city. Real espresso, not that dirty water from Ravenwood. I'll be direct, Anthony. I want you here, Regional Director of Operations, reporting directly to me, full autonomy over your decisions. The salary, 30% more than what you're making now. He knew what I made. It's a small industry. Everyone knows what everyone makes. Performance bonus, company car, premium health plan, stock options after a year. We're planning an IPO in 2027. Sounds interesting. But tell me more about the company's vision. He lit up, his eyes shining. We're trying to break into the heavy machinery components market. It's a market dominated by dinosaurs like Ravenwood. Companies stuck in the last century. We want to modernize, digitize, create real efficiency. Your relationships with Morris Industries, Campobello Manufacturing and Southern Frontier Equipment would be crucial. I won't lie, your network is part of the value you bring. At least he was honest. I'd need to give Ravenwood 2 weeks' notice. I respect my commitments, of course. That's one of the things I admire about you. Real professionalism, not just talk. But Anthony, honestly, I suspect they'll let you go as soon as they hear you're coming here. David was right. On Friday afternoon, Gerald called me in again. This time Ethan was there, sitting in the corner like a student in the principal's office. The kid looked like he'd lost 10 pounds in a week. Apparently the news of my interview had reached them. The walls have ears in Chicago. I heard you're interviewing with competitors. Gerald's voice was cold. I'm exploring my opportunities. It's my right, while you're still our employee, while you have access to sensitive information. While you're training Ethan. That's a conflict of interest. Corporate espionage. I'm fulfilling my notice period, training my replacement, exactly as I promised. So I haven't shared any confidential information with anyone. Your client relationships are company property. Contracts you signed as a representative of Ravenwood. My client relationships are professional, built on my personal reputation. The contracts belong to the company. The relationships are personal. Gerald's face was now a deep shade of purple. Those clients belong to Ravenwood Ventures. If you try to steal them, we will sue you for everything you have. Your apartment, your car, even your daughter's child support. I will destroy you, Anthony. Ethan spoke up from the corner, his voice weak. Uncle Gerald, maybe we should consider... Shut up, Ethan, this is grown-up talk. The young man shrank in his chair. For a moment, I felt genuine pity for him. Gerald never took his eyes off me. Anthony, you're leaving through that door today, now. Security will escort you while you clean out your desk. You will no longer have access to our systems or the building. And if you try to steal our clients, I will make sure you never work in this industry again. I have connections, friends, people who owe me favors. I stood up slowly, strangely calm. Gerald, I gave you 5 years of my life, perfect reviews, 60-hour weeks with no paid overtime. I trained your nephew even though I knew he was taking my job. I have been nothing but professional through this entire process. And now you treat me like a criminal? You're a traitor. After everything I did for you, I pulled you out of unemployment at 39. I gave you a chance when no one else would, and this is how you thank me? I walked to the door and turned. Ethan, if you need help, you can call me. My cell is the same. Despite what your uncle thinks, I want you to succeed. It's not your fault you're in this situation." Ethan nodded gratefully, his eyes welling up. Gerald exploded. "Get out now! Security!" 2 security guards escorted me to my desk. George and Ed, men I had greeted every day for 5 years. They looked embarrassed. "Sorry, Mr. Anthony. Orders are orders," George said. "No problem, guys. You're just doing your jobs." I put my few personal belongings in a box. A photo of Sophia, a pen holder she gave me for Father's Day. A small cactus Megan from accounting gave me on my first anniversary with the company. The cactus had survived for 5 years. Ironic. As I left, I passed by my colleagues. Some looked away, afraid of association. Others gave a discreet, supportive nod. Megan gave me a quick hug, whispering, "You did the right thing." I walked out of Ravenwood Ventures for the last time on a sunny Friday afternoon. No farewell party, no ceremonial handshake, no thank you speech. Escorted out like a criminal after 5 years of exemplary service. And you know what? I felt free, truly free for the first time in years. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and I had a second interview at Silverlink on Monday. Life goes on, and sometimes it gets better when you have the courage to turn the page. On Monday, I arrived at Silverlink for the second interview. David greeted me with a wide smile. "I heard Gerald let you go early." Dramatically, from what I hear. With security and everything. News travels fast. He must be panicking now. 3 clients have already called asking about the transition. Janet Morris is particularly concerned. "Did you speak with her?" She called me on Saturday. "On my personal cell. Wanted to know my plans." David leaned forward. "And what did you tell her?" "That I was considering a few options. That I would make a decision this week." "Perfect, let's make your decision easy. Besides the package we discussed, what else do you need?" "Real autonomy. I don't want to have to ask for permission on operational decisions. Hiring, suppliers, processes. If I'm going to build something here, I need freedom." "Done. What else?" "I want to bring 2 people from my old team. If they want to come, of course. Megan Sakamoto from accounting and Robert Diaz from operational support. Good people, competent, loyal. If you vouch for them, that's good enough for me." "What else?" "One personal thing. I need flexibility on alternate Thursdays and Fridays. My daughter visits me on those days. Family first, always. It's one of our policies. By the way, we have real parental leave here. Not the ridiculous 5 days the law requires." We shook hands. "I would start in 2 weeks. Enough time to rest, reorganize my life, and watch from a distance as the circus at Ravenwood caught fire." And it caught fire quickly. On Tuesday, Ethan called me. It was 10 at night. "Anthony, please, I need help." His voice was desperate. "Ethan, calm down. What happened?" "Morris is canceling the contract. Janet said she doesn't trust Ravenwood anymore. That without you, there's no guarantee of quality. Uncle Gerald is furious, yelling at everyone, blaming me for not holding on to the account." "Breathe. Do you have the manual I created?" "I do, but I can't understand half of it. There are too many codes, too many cross-references." "Anthony, I'm not ready for this." "I know I'm not. I know you know it too." I spent 2 hours on the phone with him, explaining processes, calming his panic. Not because I owed Gerald anything, but because Ethan was as much a victim as I had been. In the end, I suggested, "Ethan, be honest with your uncle. Tell him you need 6 months of real training before you take over. Bring in someone experienced temporarily. He'll never accept that. It would be admitting he was wrong, that he promoted someone unqualified, that nepotism failed. Then you have 2 choices. Go down with the ship or jump off while you still can." A long silence. "Then thank you, Anthony, for everything, for not hating me too. You're a good kid, Ethan. You deserve a real chance to learn and grow, not to be thrown to the lions to satisfy your uncle's ego. I'll think about what you said. Good luck. And Ethan, if you need a reference for another job, you can count on me." His silence said it all. The revenge came 6 months later, but not in a way I had expected or planned. I was thriving at Silverlink. I had brought Megan and Robert with me. We built a solid team. 3 of my old clients had migrated with us, including Morris. Janet made a point of holding an event to announce the new partnership. My salary was 30% higher, but my quality of life had improved by 200%. I was home for dinner. I watched Sophia's school games. I slept 8 hours a night. David called me into his office one September afternoon. He was holding a tablet, smiling like the cat that ate the canary. "You need to see this," he said, showing me the screen. The Wall Street Journal headline, "Ravenwood Ventures Regional Division in Collapse. Nepotism and mismanagement lead to 60% revenue loss." The article was devastating. It detailed how Ravenwood had lost 4 major accounts in 5 months. Not just Morris, but Campobello Manufacturing, Southern Frontier, and Integrated Logistics. Revenue in the Midwest region had plummeted. The board had launched an investigation into management practices. They discovered emails where Gerald admitted to promoting his nephew without adequate qualifications. "Gerald Peterson was fired last week," David said. "Apparently, he tried to blame you for the failure. Said you sabotaged the transition. The board didn't buy it, especially after 3 managers confirmed you tried to make a professional transition and were escorted out of the building. Megan had given her testimony. Robert too. Even Paul, the former intern, confirmed my professional conduct. I read on. Ethan had resigned after 3 struggling months. He went back to grad school, this time for supply chain management. At least he learned something from the experience. According to the article, Gerald was facing a lawsuit from Morris Industries for breach of contract. A supply chain delay caused a production shutdown that cost them $10 million. Without me to resolve the crisis, without a network of backup suppliers, the system had collapsed. There's more, David continued. 3 of their remaining clients have reached out. They want to know if you can take them on. They said Ravenwood is a mess. Nobody knows anything, processes are lost, contracts are in disarray. It's tempting to take them all, but we have to be selective. I don't want to grow too fast and lose quality. I agree. Maybe 2 of the 3. The ones most aligned with our profile. David folded the tablet. The world turns, huh? Gerald spent 5 years underestimating you. Now he's unemployed, being sued and burned in the market, while you're here building something better. I don't take any pleasure in it. Well, maybe a little. Gerald engineered his own downfall, but I feel for Ethan and for the employees who stayed. They're hiring from the competition, offering 50% above market to bring in experienced people. Too little, too late, but at least they're trying. I hope they recover. The industry needs healthy competition. A year later, I was driving through Gary on business when I stopped for lunch at a diner near the airport. A simple place, honest food. I saw a familiar figure at a corner table. Ethan Peterson was sitting alone in a booth in the corner, reading a textbook. He was thinner, with new glasses and a neatly trimmed beard. He looked more mature. The book was on industrial supply chain management. It was filled with sticky notes and annotations. He looked up as I approached. Instant recognition, then a genuine smile. "Anthony, what a coincidence. Or maybe not. The world of industrial logistics in the Midwest is small. Mind if I sit, please? I was just going to eat alone." "Studying on the weekend?" He laughed, a little embarrassed. "Yeah. I found out I actually like this stuff when I study it properly, not just when I'm thrown in the deep end. Master's program at the University of Chicago. Focus on supply chain. The professors are incredible. So you went back to school. Wise decision. I decided I should actually learn what I was supposed to be doing. You know, the fundamentals. I learned there's no shortcut for experience. A degree helps, but it doesn't replace practical knowledge. How's your uncle?" His face turned serious. "It's complicated. He still partially blames me for what happened. Says you poisoned me against him, that you sabotaged the company remotely, that you conspired with the clients. Ethan, you know that's not what happened." "I know, everyone knows. He just can't accept that he was wrong. That nepotism has consequences. That competence matters more than blood. He's living with his parents now, trying to start some businesses of his own, but his reputation is tarnished. No one wants to do business with him. It's sad, really. He was a powerful man who lost everything to arrogance." We drank our coffees in silence for a moment. "I wanted to thank you," Ethan said suddenly. "You could have completely sabotaged me. Let me drown without any help at all. It would have been fair, considering. But you tried to help me, even after everything. You weren't to blame for the situation. You were as much a victim of your uncle's ambitions as I was. It didn't make sense to punish you for it. I don't know if I would have had the same grace, maturity, decency, whatever you call it. You would have. When the anger fades, you see that revenge is rarely worth it. The best thing is to move on and build something better. And you did build. I hear things about Silverlink. 40% growth this year. You guys picked up several of Ravenwood's accounts. They came to us. They prefer working with people they know and trust. We didn't force anything. You deserve the success. You worked hard for it, and you'll get yours too. The right way this time, he nodded. Actually, I got an internship at Modern Logistics. 3 days a week while I study, starting from the bottom, learning everything. My supervisor doesn't even know who my uncle is. I prefer it that way. Excellent company. I know their director of ops. Want me to give him a call, introduce you properly, not as anyone's nephew, but as a dedicated student I know? Ethan looked moved. You'd do that? After everything? Everyone deserves a second chance when they're willing to do it right. You're putting in the real work now. You deserve to be recognized for it. I paid for our lunches. We shook hands, equals this time. Not a forced boss and subordinate. Before I left, Ethan said, Anthony, one last thing. What would you tell me, so I don't make the same mistakes? Never accept what you haven't earned. The weight of it will crush you. And always value the people who help you grow. They're the ones who make the difference between success and failure. He nodded, absorbing it. I'll remember that. I promise. 6 months later, I ran into Gerald Peterson at the mall. He was alone, thinner, his hair completely gray. He saw me, hesitated, then walked over. Anthony, his voice was different. None of the arrogance, none of the command. Gerald, how are you? He gave a bitter laugh. You know how I am. Everyone knows. The whole industry knows. I lost everything. The company, my reputation, my money, even my family is distant. Do you blame me? I blame everyone. You, Ethan, the board, the market. But deep down, he paused. Deep down, I know it was my fault. I was arrogant, nepotistic, blind. I thought I could manipulate everything and everyone. That merit was less important than connections. It was hard to see someone so broken. Despite everything, I felt no pleasure in his downfall. I'm sorry it came to this, Gerald. I truly am. You are? After what I did to you. I humiliated you. I screwed you over. I treated you like trash at the end. Why would you feel anything but satisfaction? Because holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's over. I'm fine, and you're dealing with the consequences of your choices. There's nothing to be gained by celebrating your fall. He studied me for a long moment. You've changed, or maybe I just never saw you clearly. I always saw you as a tool, someone to be used, and now I see you were the best employee I ever had. And I threw you away for pride and nepotism. Ethan told me how you helped him. Even after everything, he's doing well now. Doing it the right way, I know. We're distant, but I keep track. He's going to be better than both of us. He learned from our mistakes. If you need anything, Gerald. He held up a hand. No thanks, but no. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. I'll find my way, or I won't, but it will be my way. We said our goodbyes. It was the last time I ever saw him. 2 years after I quit, I was in my office at Silverlink when Megan came in. She was my controller now. Robert was the deputy director of operations. We had built a dream team. Did you see? She showed me her phone. LinkedIn. Ethan Peterson promoted to supply chain coordinator at Modern Logistics. Well deserved, after starting as an intern. I smiled. The kid had learned. The hard way, but he'd learned. On his own merit, through hard work with gradual growth. No shortcuts, no nepotism. Sophia called me that afternoon. She was 18 now, studying industrial engineering. Dad, remember that time you quit your job? When I was 16? How could I forget? It changed our lives. I never told you, but that inspired me. Seeing you stand up for yourself, choose dignity over stability. It taught me that we don't have to accept injustice. That there's always another way, even if it's harder. Are you facing something like that? Not exactly, but I had to make a tough decision in college about a group project where they wanted me to do all the work and share the credit. I thought of you. I said no. I did my own project. And how did it go? I got an A. They got a C. The professor noticed the difference in quality. Sometimes standing up for what's right pays off. That's my girl. I'm proud of you. I learned from the best. By the way, dinner tomorrow? There's a new restaurant I want to try. My treat this time. You bet. I hung up the phone and looked out the window. Chicago stretched to the horizon, full of opportunities and pitfalls, successes and failures. I thought about everything that had happened since that day in the Ravenwood conference room. The decision to leave had been a watershed moment, not just professionally but personally. It had taught me my own worth. It showed me that courage is sometimes simply saying no. That dignity is worth more than stability. That true success comes from building something with integrity, not from accepting scraps with forced gratitude. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. "Anthony, this is John Phillips from Southern Logistics. I've heard you've done wonders at Silverlink. We have a proposal that might interest you. Vice President of Operations for the Americas." "Can we talk?" I smiled. The world really does turn. From a disposable employee to a sought-after executive. From someone who would lower his head to someone who chose his own path. I replied, "I appreciate the interest. Let's schedule a conversation. But I'll tell you up front, I'm very happy where I am. It would have to be something truly special to make me consider a move." The response came back quickly. "That's exactly the attitude we're interested in. People who know their value. Let's talk." I put my phone away and got back to work. I had a team meeting in half an hour. We were going to discuss our expansion into the Northeast. New challenges, new opportunities. Megan had prepared the analysis. Robert had mapped out the logistics. The team I built, based on competence and trust, not on last names or connections. As I prepped for the meeting, I thought one last time about Gerald and Ravenwood. Not with anger or satisfaction, but with a strange kind of gratitude. If he hadn't betrayed me, I'd still be there, stuck with empty promises, waiting for recognition that would never come. Working weekends to build someone else's success. His injustice had set me free. It forced me to recognize my own value. It pushed me towards something better. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are actually liberations in disguise. Sometimes the person who hurts you the most ends up being the one who helps you the most unintentionally. Because they force you to stop accepting less than you deserve. They force you to fight for something better. They teach you that dignity is worth more than security. That self-respect trumps stability. That it's better to build something new than to beg for scraps from the old. The meeting began. I looked at my team, the people I chose who believed in me, who built something with me that we were all proud of. No nepotism, no political games, no empty promises. Just hard work, competence, and mutual respect. "We're going to build something incredible in the Northeast," I said. "Something that will be a benchmark for the industry." Megan smiled. Robert nodded. The team leaned forward, engaged. This is how it was supposed to be. People motivated by purpose, not fear. Led by example, not intimidation. Valued for merit, not by relation. As they presented the analysis, my phone vibrated discreetly. A text from Ethan. "Anthony, I got it. They promoted me to manager. On my own merit. Thank you for teaching me the right way." I smiled to myself and put the phone away. The world turns, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. But in the end, everyone reaps what they sow. Gerald sowed arrogance and reaped ruin. Ethan sowed humility and effort, and he's reaping growth. And me. I sowed courage on that day I said no to injustice. And I reaped a life I'm proud of. A career built with integrity. The respect of my daughter. The admiration of my peers. The peace of sleeping without regrets. Sometimes the best revenge is just to live well. To build something better. To prove not with words but with actions that you were always worth more than they gave you. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. Not the fall of others, but your own rise. Not external validation, but the internal certainty that you did the right thing. Because at the end of the day, when you look in the mirror, the only approval that really matters is your own. The meeting continued, plans being made, strategies defined, the future being built. Outside, Chicago pulsed with its usual chaotic energy, and I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not by chance or nepotism, but by choice and by merit. Life isn't always fair, but sometimes, just sometimes, justice prevails. It just needs someone brave enough to demand it.